So this isn't going to be the video you were expecting, but this is just something that I've been meaning to make for quite a while now. I have an obsession with the Panasonic cameras, apparently. I do have 3 of them, well, I actually have 5 of them, and I really like them. I think they're good cameras. And because of this supposed obsession, I've done a lot of Googling, reading online about these cameras and stuff like that. And because of that Googling, I found some really kind of interesting pictures that I want to show you now. And what I've found is basically a series of photos showing prototype HVX200's. I hope you can excuse the kind of weird looking setup. I've got my camera running to get the good sound. I've got my phone hooked up with a depth lens wide angle, all hooked up into my computer. It's quite a confusing little thing I've got going here. So I've got quite a bunch of kind of interesting things here. So let's have a look at the pre-production prototype photos I have. And as you can see, I've got quite a decent bundle going. These are from a variety of places. Some of these are from old blogs from like 2005, 2006. Some of them are from Barry Green, from DVX User, and some of them are from kind of an affiliated Panasonic website. Now, due to the fact that these photos are quite old, this was kind of the early days of kind of incorporating photos and videos and stuff on the web, the quality of some of these images are poor, to put it politely. So I've had to do some AI enhancement on some of these just to kind of bring them up and kind of bring some life into it. As you can see, this one here is 341 by 256. It's not very big, so I've enhanced them previously just for my own sake, and we'll take a look at some of the ones that I've enhanced just so we can have a look. Let's start from the first one I've got here, if my computer doesn't catch fire. So this photo right here is from the Panasonic kind of reveal event talking about the upcoming camera. At the time I don't think they'd revealed a name yet, so this was how they revealed it. They had it in kind of a see-through tarp, opaque tarp, just kind of revealing the camera body and just little bits you can see from it. The next one here, this is from one of the earliest photos that was sent out to kind of tech websites so they could cover it. Now, this looks like a pretty bog-standard HVX, but there are a few differences that I want to point out. So I've got my original HVX200 here. So there were a few different types of prototypes that Panasonic put out. Some of the earlier ones were just kind of concept designs, almost kind of just like, could they actually build a P2 card camera and a DV camera into one? So the designs were quite a little bit different. This camera here is, I believe, a little bit further along. This was closer to release. One of the things you can notice straight away is the fact that the lens hood on this camera is different to the one in the prototype. So I believe that's using a kind of an in-between between a DVX lens hood and the 16:9 lens hood that comes with the HVX. As you can see, it looks a little bit more square compared to this. Another thing you can notice is the fact that the white balance button was actually at one point right above the gain, which is now just the iris button. The buttons themselves, the mode check and user check buttons, all seem pretty similar. Oh, the fact that the lens had no actual distance markings on them, that's quite different. You can see at the top that the record pause button that you use in the playback is different. Moving on to the next one. Here you can see in this photo a picture of the back, and straight away you can tell there are a number of differences. The first one being the fact that the DV deck on this version of the HVX is very similar to the DVX100A. It had kind of a slide instead of something that you put your finger into and open up. The next thing is the fact that the switch to go between the P2 and the tape is also on the wrong side of the camera, somewhere around about here, just above the battery. The audio dials are a little bit different. They don't have this circular bit underneath. The scene file dial is also different, and there's also more of a curve to the camera just here. And the P2 card door looks way smaller in that camera, and there's actually kind of like a circular kind of outline right here, which is also different. Moving on to the top, again you can notice very closely there the tape drive open mechanism is different. Now these are some of the ones that they revealed to the public. These were I believe this is the same camera as this one. So this was shown at an event in 2005, I want to say. So these are actual like up-close photos with the early prototype, and as you can see you've got the white balance button there. You can also notice the shade of plastic that they would end up using is different. This is just kind of an early kind of draft material they'll use sometimes to kind of get a mock-up sent out. The front end, like where the lens is quite similar. Lens hood is still different on this one. Moving on. So this is actually a later version of the prototype. They were clearly kind of toying around with different body designs and stuff like that. And as you can see here, the back end looks very similar to how the production model HVX would end up. As you can see, it looks pretty close. Again, the materials are different. As you can see that the viewfinder looks like it's made out of kind of some cheap rubbish. On that P2 card, I think that's like a 4 gig or something. It's tiny. So this is a photo from one of Panasonic's unofficial kind of fake blogs they'd set up to kind of secretly kind of reveal information about the HVX. Can't really see it, it's a very low quality photo. Even the AI Enhance hasn't done much for it. But there you go, there's a Panasonic engineer, I presume, carrying a early version of the HVX. Now here's an interesting one. This is very close to full production, very close to it. However, a few different things here is the fact that the SD card port is moved. The SD card port is behind this door here, okay? But here it's actually right next to the P2 card slot. But when you think about it, the cards go to about there, but they were trying to get an SD card slot into it unless they wanted it to go down. So it's kind of a weird one. And you'll also notice that the Firewire port's moved as well. There, it's kind of curved and there's nothing there, and it's all kind of hidden back here. So I have a feeling at some point they were trying to get the Firewire port behind here. Sorry for all the noise. You'll also notice the switch on the back to go between P2 and the tape is in the wrong position. You'll see here, I know it's a bit kind of crusty quality, but you'll get the gist. It's set to the P2 right now, but that's on the right. When if you have it on the P2, if you have it on the right here, you're in the tape. So just little things like that I've noticed. Now I believe these photos were taken at an event in Los Angeles, and this was again around late 2005, early 2006, so they were still kind of working on the body a couple of months before the camera was actually released. Again, you can see a early version of the lens hood. It looks kind of cheap and plasticky, almost looks like it has like a rubber mould inside of it. Photo from the side, again this is the same one as before, except this one now has the record button on the right side like on the production version. I think the white balance button has moved as well, so they still haven't got the production material that they'd end up using. As you can see, the speaker's not even there. It's just stuff, little things like that. And here's a close-up view of that SD card and where the Firewire port is. But the SD card port doesn't even have a little tab to open it with. And the USB 2 port is just not even there, which is quite weird. And you can even see as well that at this point they'd changed over to the HVX200's tape mechanism, which is why the tape eject button is different. Moving on, here's a close-up, well, a front view of the lens hood again. Here we have a shot of the side. You can see the material quite close up and how kind of coarse it was looking. You can see the auto white balance button, the iris button's in a different place, the user buttons are a little bit different. So we'll leave the enhanced ones and we'll go and look at some of the other ones that I have on here. So I haven't AI enhanced these, so the quality is going to be kind of poor, but you can see here this is from a Panasonic event again, where they were actually advertising the HVX, which is still in an early version of it, but you also got the Firestore FS100. So I have a feeling that Focus Enhancements had known about the fact that the P2 cards for the HVX were going to be expensive, although they already were expensive, and they knew they needed to kind of make something. So I have a feeling Panasonic were working with Focus Enhancements to get that thing made. There's Jan, and there's Kevin Smith actually talking about the HVX at the 2005 event, which is quite cool. And you got some weird kind of concept art behind him with the Panasonic with a little P2 logo coming out of the card slot. That's kind of cool. Oh yeah, the launch event, that's what it is. And there you can see a early version of the P2 card right there. That's a 4 gig card. Apparently they did make 2 gig cards. I had no idea about this, absolutely no clue, but apparently they actually did. You can actually see the menu a bit there, but the quality is just absolute trash. You can see scene file and, you know, stuff like that. Let's move on to Barry Green's photos. So let's have a look. So this is the photo that Barry Green posted on DVX User when the camera was, like, when he got his hands on it for the first time. This was prior to his Barry Green HVX Bootcamp DVD. So this was the very earliest version of the camera that he got. And as you can see, the P2 card door, the actual thing that covers the P2 card slot, is different. The material on this one looks quite smooth, actually. I don't know what material it was. It was probably some cheap plastic. Like the viewfinder looks different, there's no speaker, just little things like that do look different. This is the one where the P2 switch, like the P2 to tape switch, is actually on the wrong one. So this is actually a somewhat kind of middle-of-the-line prototype. The buttons are in a different place, the plastic is different, the white balance button's moved, the P2 to tape switch is different, just little things like that. And the SD card and the Firewire port. So it was clear that they'd kind of figured out what they were doing with the front end of the camera and the tape side of it. They'd got the DVX200's tape deck, they've got the lens down, one or two buttons might have moved, but it was really, seemingly, the back end that they were struggling with. They had the sound in a different place, they had the ports in a different place, and just all sorts of things like that, like more curvy, things like that, you know. They seem to have been working on that back end right up until the last second. There you can actually see a closer look of the buttons right there. You got your audio monitor and variable playback speed and your VCR record, which, as I mentioned before, then got moved, for some reason, to the top half of the camera right there. I think they would have been better off where they were there. You got your menu kind of behind the right arrow key, you got your plus and minus, which ended up just turning into the audio volume. I'm stupid. So the audio monitor and variable playback speed buttons stayed the same. It's actually the VCR record button that changed. I don't think they actually had thumbnail or end search on there. Maybe they did, not sure. There you can see the auto white balance button. It's actually kind of cutting into the white balance logo a little bit, like the white balance switch. There you can see the iris, like right above the iris dial, like right here, right there. And the other interesting thing that was different, the rocker, the zoom rocker on the handle was left to right, so you'd put your thumb on it and kind of move it side to side instead of pushing it forward or backwards. Now I found that quite interesting because I don't know many of the cameras that have done something like that. So that was quite a weird little thing, and you can tell they even weren't sure about it because it's not kind of molded into the frame of the camera. It seems to have just kind of been cut out and then just stuck on, and then just like wired up, just like, okay, here you go, this one works. Another thing you'll see as well is that on the tape deck drive, or the tape deck door, it says Mini DV NTSC, but on this NTSC version of the HVX, it just says Mini DV. So that's another thing that's different. Oh, it did have an end search thumbnail, but it was the same button. Because on the original, on the, you know, release HVX, it's the audio dub thumbnail button. So that's weird. There's the back end. You can see that you have the P2 to tape switch. So you have dub, PC, switch it over to the VCR, and then you've got VCR. And a little button. Not sure what that button does. That might be for playback, you know, going between playback and recording. Interesting. Okay, I'm actually noticing more things now than I did before. So behind the door, you've got the audio channel selection, okay? You've got channel 1, channel 2, input 1, input 2, input 1, input 2. You can't do that on the release camera. You can either have input on channel 1, input left, input 1 or input 2, and on channel 2 you can have input right or input 2. So on this, you could have had stereo, or you could have sent a mono channel to both channels on either 1 or 2. That would have been quite useful. Why did they take that out? That's quite... I didn't know. Seriously, I did not notice this until now. I'm like actually looking at this closely. And then on input 2 for the phantom power, they've removed these big toggles here. These line mic toggles, which you use if you're plugging a mic, or if you're plugging in like a sound desk if you're doing a gig or something. So they'd moved those switches to inside the camera. Now I can get that, because that would be easy to fuck up. That would be an easy fuck up right there, like, oh, I'll turn my microphone on, but instead you've just put line level and there's nothing, you can't hear anything. So I could understand that. But I can't get the removal of input 1 for channel 2. That is weird. That could be a DVC Pro HD kind of issue as well. Oh, and another thing I've just noticed is that on the user buttons, the little knob to indicate the middle one is on the third one. For some reason. The lens again. Fucking hell, that thing's dusty. And then these are some of the photos on a German tech blog that I'd found. So you can even see the placement of this one here. It's a bit funky because of the quality, but you can see that the iris actually had a label going to it with an arrow, and the button was moved to the side. I'm going to say this one's from around like 2005 or something like that. Then you've got the side. Looks pretty much the same. Although the handle is different, I've just noticed. That one seems to be curving kind of like that, like in an arch, whilst the handle on this one is straight. Then we got one of the first shoots done with the camera by some bloke. No idea. And then you've got some... Well, you've actually got the HVX reveal information from DV Expo that I downloaded. It's an hour long, okay? It's in garbage quality and garbage sound, but it is, you know, relevant. Then we got another video. This is from... oh god, no idea when. No idea when this is from. But as you can see, the camera, and well, the quality's awful, but the camera here is a little bit closer to final production. The plastics on the back end still seem a little bit rough, so again, they might have been working on it. But then again, they probably didn't want to just hand these things off to grubby people in the public. So that's pretty much it for that. Anyway, there is one more thing that I should mention. When this camera came out, there were a few little modifications that people were making to them. Now, one of them was a Firewire mod. Now, I found this via a listing on eBay with an unlisted video in the description. So I downloaded the video, okay, so we can have a look at what is different here. Okay, so he's just kind of explaining the camera, how it works with the Firestore that he's selling with it. But you'll notice straight away there's an extra connector right next to the P2 card slot. Now that is actually a Firewire modification. I had no idea this was a thing you could do. So you could get rid of, or at least disconnect the shitty, awful 4-pin connector, rewire a 4-pin connector into something like that, and have a much more secure and stable Firewire connection. I had absolutely no idea this thing was like, you know, something you could do. So have a look. So he plugs it into there, locks into place, and then there you go, he just plugs it in, and it works. I had no idea this was like a thing you could do. Very cool. I much prefer that kind of connection over a fucking awful 4-pin anyway. So that's one other thing that I'd found, but the other thing I'd found was the Hydra modded HVX200. Now, if you don't know, in around 2004, 2005, a company called Realstream had put out a product, or like a modification, for the DVX100 where you could get 1080p, 422, like 12-bit color, like uncompressed video. It was insane. They had to take the camera, cut into it, they had to tap straight into the Panasonic sensor and have a USB cable coming out of it. And then you'd hook that up to a laptop running special software that you had to use, and then you would record the video to the laptop. These cameras do float about, they are still around. The problem is they were really expensive, you had to carry a laptop while filming, so it was kind of a pain in the arse. But some people did buy them, and you do see them. They were called the Andromeda mod for the DVX. But the same company, Realstream, announced and almost sold the Hydra modded HVX, which could supposedly get 2K resolution, again 12-bit color, some ridiculous like uncompressed like video and all this stuff out of a HVX by once again tapping into the camera. Now, just before the Hydra mod HVX was kind of open for like, oh yes, give us your HVX, we will do it for you, they were bought out by a company and shut down. The camera supposedly never came out, was never sold, and they just disappeared into thin air. Some people think it was red because they were kind of just popping up around this time, so I kind of believe that. But after again doing some digging online, I had found someone who has a Hydra modded HVX200. Now, it's pretty much going to be a bog standard HVX, okay? Because if you don't have the software and the correct connections and all this stuff, it is kind of pointless. But I'll show it to you anyway, because it is kind of interesting that these things do exist. So again, it's pretty much a bog standard HVX, but as you can see, right there, just zoom in, you've got that extra connection. And I'm going to guess that you would connect that to your computer via USB or whatever it might have been, FireWire or something, and you could get uncompressed, like, supposedly 2K video out of this thing. Now, the problem with this mod is the fact that the sensors inside of them, there's 3 of them, are 960 by 720. I'm not entirely sure how they're getting 2K out of it. I know there's a limitation with the DVC Pro HD being like 960 by 720 and then 1280 by 1080 and all that stuff. But how the fuck were they getting 2K out of this? Were they kind of combining all the sensors together to get like one output or something? I have no idea. But however they were doing it, they're fucking geniuses. Unfortunately, I don't think they ever actually showed any video from this, or it was all purely just technical specifications of what they had managed to get out of it. If you are watching, the people who did this, please show up on the internet again so people can ask you questions. I'd love to find out how you did this. It's fucking insane. So yeah, this guy managed to get his hands on one. Probably one of the only one of 2, 3 Hydra modded cameras out there. Hydra modded HVX's. That's pretty much it for the actual prototype HVX's. I will quickly jump in and tell you about depth perception. So this blog popped up, okay, by this guy supposedly called Tosh, and he was talking about how he wanted to go HD and how excited he was about the Panasonic camera that was supposedly coming out and all this stuff, and talking about flash memory and how amazing it is and how tapes are shit. And he was putting all these blog posts out and all this stuff and giving information about the camera and all this stuff. Now the thing about this was, he was putting out information which hadn't actually been sent to tech blogs or like filmmaking magazines or camera reviewers or anything like that. He was just dropping this information about, 422 SD, 42, and just all this information about the camera before Panasonic had officially said anything, and before they'd given any information to any of these tech websites and everything like that. So all of a sudden this blog kind of blows up a little bit, like, who the fuck is Tosh? Like, what the shit? How's he getting this information? Is he just chatting shit, or what is it? So he posts for a while, okay, and he posts photos of his trip to see his friends in Japan. Oh, I stopped by Panasonic. Oh, what's that? It's a camera. It turned out that Panasonic had made this whole website up to kind of inadvertently leak out information into the public in a fun way, okay? And they got called out on this. This was like 2006 they got called out on this. And they had to put on the blog, Tosh Pulowski, or whatever his name is. Tosh is a fictional character used to deliver real information from multiple sources at Panasonic in an entertaining way. We hope you find the information helpful, and we look forward to hearing from you. They literally got called out, and then they had to go, oh fuck, we have to, like, tell them it's us. So if you go to the website now, which is still up after all these years, last post, May 12, 2006, hi folks, for all the real juice on the HVX, go to the Panasonic website. Thanks to everyone for reading what has been posted on my blog. I will not be posting anymore. My job, as they say, is done. Was this Jan's idea?
But is it true 1920?
The Cinealta isn't 1920.
Either.
No.
So this is also 1440? Purely. There's no up conversion or anything like that.
You gotta not worry about the numbers.
So the whole thing got taken down, but if you look at it here, yeah, because this wasn't here, okay, this had been added after the fact, so yeah, the whole thing is just fucking stupid. Like, could you imagine Sony making a zine from like a hip, cool fucking artist called the VX1 zine fucking thing, whatever, And he's like, oh, I can't wait for that mini DV technology and all that shit. That's basically the same fucking thing. Like, oh, free chips? So this was going on for a while. They got called out by a couple of people. This is actually where I got some of the photos from, so I'm not too worried about it because it's from a fake person. And there he is. That is Tosh himself. Right there. There he is. On the left. With some guy from Panasonic. So fucking ridiculous. How much were the HVX selling? Okay. HVX200 with one 4GB card, $6,645. And then if you want the top of the line one, HVX200, two 4GB P2 cards and the P2 card store device, $9,284. Fuck me. Right, I think I'm done here. So, thank you for watching this rather long, rambling look at the HVX200 prototypes and all that kind of shit. The guide video is coming. It's going to be very fucking long, so prepare yourself mentally for that. And I'll see you all hopefully soon.